Advanced active record associations. The whole point of active record is to communicate with the database, right? So we have two different worlds. We have our SQL world and we have our Ruby world. And I'm using my hands a lot, and no one can see that. But where I would start with something like this is opening the specs. I'd open up the schema. You can flip back and forth, but it's better just to have it here. So if you don't know how to do that, this little 4 thing, you can either go View, Layout, this thing, or it's just Command Option 5 is what that means, right? So first thing I would do in a DBC challenge anyway is run our tests. Bundle exec rspec. And if I run these, first thing you'll notice is what? What else? Anything else that's weird about this? This looks different, doesn't it?
There's no color.
It's not in color. How do I add color? Close. I can say dash color, and that adds color. But most of the time you don't have to do that. So how come I had to do that? Good question. So what it's doing is it's looking for a .rspec file. And if I have a .rspec file, then it will read it. If I don't, it won't. So I can say stuff like color. And if I come back here, now I can run the same command without color, and it will do it. So that's cool. If you like the stupid FD thing, like a lot of you like, then I could add that in there too, and then we get all this useless information at the top that tells us nothing at all, so you don't need it. But if you want it, knock yourself out. So that's the thing. I just wanted to show that because most of our challenges have .rspecs, but if not, you can also do a global one for your whole computer. So that's a fun thing. So one thing I would like to do is fail fast. And all this means is when is this big enough, by the way? I can make it a little bigger. How about? So when I run this command, the very first test that fails, it's just going to stop. So there we go. Instead of running all 20 tests or whatever, it stops on the very first one. So this is purchase spec 14. So if I go look at purchase spec 14, we see it returns the first shirt that was purchased, and we expect purchase.shirt to equal shirt. And just to be sure, @shirt is an instance of a shirt, right? And purchase is an instance of a purchase. So we'll also note that this was the purchase spec. So if the tests are written well, this is doing only things with the purchase model, right? So it's saying undefined method shirt. So one thing that I could do in my purchase model is I could define a method called shirt and run the spec again, and we would see we'd get a different error this time, right? But we can use active record to write methods for us, kind of like an adder accessor or adder reader, right? So the thing, I'm going to look down here. Can I make that bigger? No. Can everyone see this? Yeah. So I'm in the purchase table, right? The purchase model is what speaks to the purchases table in the database, right? And I'm trying to get back an instance of a shirt. So from purchases, I'm trying to get to shirt. So what color line gets me there? This one. I guess they're hard to see. It's like a green line for me. But yeah, so we're trying to go from here to here. And the way they're connected is through this shirt ID. Is this a foreign key or a primary key?
Foreign key.
And how do we know that?
Dash ID.
The underscore ID, maybe.
Oh, underscore. Dirt.
But the other way I think about it is if this key is not the name of my table, then it is foreign to me, right? So shirt ID. The primary key always is just ID. Foreign key is the underscore ID. So you're totally right. But that's why it's a foreign key. It is foreign to me because it's from somewhere else, right? So if the shirt ID is in my table, because we're connecting on this green line, then that tells me something, which is what?
That it's the many, and the shirt is the one, so it's one-to-many relationship.
But I'm from purchase to shirt, so you're totally right. But if I have the foreign key, then I belong to something else. Yeah. So belong to. And I say shirt here. Why do I have to say shirt?
I think you have to say belongs.
Yeah, if I want it to work. Thank you.
Because you're in purchase, and it belongs to shirt.
Yeah, what?
It's the shirt class.
That's a good guess. The question was, why do I have to say shirt here?
It belongs to one.
So the only reason is because the test says so. If I said belong purchase.stuff, I could say stuff here. Oops. Right? I can call it whatever I want. I can't click over there for some reason. What's happening? There we go. If I did this, this would be the same thing. We have to call it shirt literally because our test is telling us we have to. Otherwise, we can call it anything we want. Active record associations are making methods to make us read our code better, ultimately. Easier to get things. So if we say belongs to shirt, and we run the test again, we see that that one passed, right? Line 14. That's the one problem with fail fast. You'll see the little green dot here. Is that one passed now? So behind the scenes, let's talk about what this is doing. So some of you know the answer. What's the assumption it's making here when we say belongs to shirt? Yeah, there is a class named shirt. Oh, awkward. And a table named shirts. Is this true?
Yes.
This is true, then this just works. If I would have called it stuff, then it wouldn't know where to look, and I would have to tell it more information because there's no stuff model or stuffs table, right? Cool. So then we get to the next fail. Undefined method purchaser for purchase. This is the purchase spec 18. So I come back here, expect purchase.purchaser to equal purchaser. So our purchaser is an instance of a user in this case, right? Anyone confused where I'm coming from with that? It's okay. Okay, so we're trying to get from purchases to users. So how do we connect here?
Through the foreign key purchase ID.
Yeah, we're going to take this black line, right? And because the foreign key is in my table, then that means that I belongs to something else. And I belong to purchaser only because the method tells me I have to call it that. So let's run the spec again. And now it's saying uninitialized constant purchase purchaser. So one thing I'll urge you to do is always run your specs every single time after you change your code. And this error doesn't really tell me any information, right? Anyone understand what this means? Because I don't. But when you're writing your own associations and you don't have specs written yet, you could write the spec first and save yourself the trouble. But if you don't have specs written yet, then you'll see this error and be like, oh, this is how I fixed it that time I saw it, right? So just get used to seeing the errors. Errors are your friends when you understand what they mean, right? Cool. So what's the assumption that it's making here? Purchaser class and purchaser's table, right? And there is not this time. So we have to give it more information. So what more information do we have to tell it? We have to tell it which table and model to look at, right? We're trying to get an instance of a user back, right, our purchaser. So how do we tell it which class? Yeah, class name and user, right? I think we can stringify it also, but
Yeah, I thought it was.
yeah, so you can say symbol or you can say quotes. I don't think it matters. They both seem to work.
I keep trying to find.
It's fine. I like to do it this way because I'm lazy. I don't know. I like the color looks better this way to me.
Yeah. Well, I thought it had to be quotes. Now, like I'm unlearning a word.
So this actually makes another assumption. What's the assumption this makes? There's a foreign key. Yes, there is a foreign key purchaser ID in my table. Does that make sense? So because I'm in the purchases table and there is a purchaser ID, because I call this purchaser, it's looking for something with this association name underscore ID in my table. And if it's not, if we called it user ID, then we would have to tell it more information. And we'll get to one that does that. Cool. And we'll see now that we are now in the shirt spec failing. So let's open that up. So shirt spec. And our first fail here is expect shirt.designer to equal designer. So our @designer is a user. So we're trying to go from shirts over to user. How do we do that? What color line? The red line, right? Shirts straight over to user. So I'm in the shirts table, and I have a foreign key in my table. So what does that mean? That I belongs to something else. I think that's why I always write belong to, because when I'm speaking it out loud, it doesn't sound right. So belongs to designer. Why designer? Because we have to, because the test said so. That's the only reason. Cool. Uninitialized constant shirt designer. So what are our assumptions here? Class designer and table designers, right? This is a pattern. It's going to happen like 9 trillion times. That's always what it's thinking first. It's not that smart. It's just doing this. There is no designer table, designer's table or class designer, so we have to tell it where to look. And class name user, exactly.
Does it matter if you put user capital versus just?
The question was, does it matter if it's capital user or not? I don't know. Let's try it. I think it does. It didn't actually care. Did it?
Before you had 3 passing and now you have 2.
But this is for sales. So I think it doesn't matter, but I would capitalize it because it is a class name.
You could do either quotes or,
Yeah.
or as a symbol.
Yeah, I'll just capitalize.
Screws me up. I thought
Yeah,
it was
it's the
quotes.
name of a class, so it makes sense to capitalize it. All right, so now we have undefined method sales for shirt, and this is spec 21. So 21, expect shirt.sales to match array purchase 1 and purchase 2. So purchase 1 and 2 are instances of purchases, and we need to use this method sales. So we're from shirt, we're trying to get to purchases. How are we connected? Green line, right? Is the foreign key in my table or the other table? Right? This time it's in the other one. I have the primary ID, so that tells me what? Yeah. Has many sales. Cool. If we run the spec again, by the way, Command K to clear out this console every time. Everyone know how to do that? Because sometimes people will write clear, that's fine, there's a difference. So if I say clear, then it clears it out, but it's still up here. It basically does a page down. If I do Command K, there's no scrolling, it's gone. But I always Command K because if I want to see what was on the screen before, I can just run what I had run a second ago. It's not that big a deal.
What if you want to go back to your special stuff that happened before?
Like
Like
what kind of special stuff?
Like I want to see. I don't know. Did I migrate? Did I remember to migrate? Something in the things, and you use Command K. Can you get back to your history?
Yeah,
What
history.
Just
Type history. There's all my history. I can't scroll it all there because you'll see some stuff that you shouldn't see. So that's it. Yeah, you can just say history. So, and if your migrations need to be run, your test will tell you anyway. So, we only care about this one test. So, uninitialized constant shirt sale, and that's because the first assumption it's making is cool. Everyone feel free to yell it out. I appreciate Yusef, but not everyone needs. Right? Cool. So that's not the case. So what do we have to tell it?
Class underscore name.
Which class? Purchase, right? It's the class, not the table. Cool. And that passed. So now undefined method purchasers, shirt spec 25. So we're trying to get back purchasers, still user instances. So we need this one. We're going from purchases to user. How are they connected? The left line, whatever that one is. Yeah. Yeah. Is the foreign key in my table or the other table?
You're in shirt, so wait.
Are we doing the same one still, or are we doing this one?
We are on 25. Undefined method purchasers.
Well, foreign.
So I'm in the
Yeah,
Oh, dang it. I'm coming from shirts. Sorry, thank you. I see what you're saying. So we're on the shirt spec. We're starting on the shirts table, and we're trying to get over to purchasers, which are our user instances. So how do we get there?
The top horizontal line.
So you could go straight across, but that's only going to tell us who designed the shirt, right?
You have to go through purchase.
So in this case, in order to get the information we need, we have to get all the purchases for this shirt and then find all the users who did it, right? So we have to go green line and then black line.
Okay.
We have to go 2 paths. That's a sign of what? Through.
Through.
Exactly right. So it has many. Why?
Many purchasers
Yeah, how come it has many and not belongs to?
because the foreign key is in the other table.
I mean, this one's a tougher one because we have multiple paths, but guess you can't have belongs to through. Not possible. So it literally has to be has many through if you're doing through. So more than one path has to be. So it has many purchasers. And what is the assumption this is making?
Class purchaser.
Yep,
Table purchasers.
totally. But that's not right.
No.
So we have to give more information. And so we were saying through because we have to take 2 paths. So this is the biggest aha moment I had when I was learning advanced associations was that through is never ever through a table ever. We're on the Ruby world side of things. We can't do anything really to the SQL side. So we're trying to map Ruby to SQL. So what through means is not through a table, but through an association. And the only choices I have to go through because I'm in the shirt model right now are sales and designer.
Design.
That's it. I cannot go through anything else. It has to be one of those 2 things. If these 2 things are not the thing I need, then I have to define something to get the thing I need. Because I can only go through existing associations.
Oh, that was helpful.
So we're in shirts. We're trying to say purchasers through. How do we get the purchasers from here? Or the purchase sales, right? So we can go through sales. And let's run this again. 25. And we'll see that it actually passed because now this is a user spec.
Can you go back to the? I think what term we did, but I thought we did something slightly different.
We did above, which is unnecessary seeing this, but we did like has many purchasers, and then we did like another line that was like has many
Users through purchasers.
a
And then
class name and then through. It was really complicated.
And then for users, we had the class name purchasers.
Yeah, I mean, there might be other ways to do it. This is definitely the easiest, but remind me, I'll take a look at it after this.
Okay, please.
Right? Yes.
Class name the same as source.
No. And we'll get to source. Source will make way more sense when we get there, I promise. So what's the other assumption this is making, by the way? Because sometimes you have to give it more information. Why don't we have to this time?
That there's already an association called sales, through sales.
Could you have through sales, but on top you already defined which class name sales belong?
Yeah, so that gets us over to purchase model. That makes sense. I get that. But how is it already connecting to users?
Is in the user in
Users table.
There's a foreign key called purchaser underscore ID.
That's exactly what it is. In the next table, there is a foreign key called purchaser. I can't spell. Purchaser ID. Purchaser ID. Right? Because this association is called purchasers, it's going to singularize. How do you say that? Singularly? That doesn't make sense. I'm not going to say that word. It's going to chop off the plural and then add an underscore, right? Yeah.
Singular
So
type.
it will make it singular and then underscore it. And if that's a thing, then it's fine. If that's not a thing, you have to give it more information. Cool? All right. So then it took us to the user spec now. So first one here, user.design shirts should return design shirt 1 and 2. So design shirt 1 and 2 are shirt instances. It's worth checking, right? Don't just assume stuff is what it is. If the test is written well, it's safe to do that. But Just takes 2 seconds to look. So we're calling design shirts, and we're trying to get from user to shirts. So how do we get there?
Has many design shirts.
How do you know? So we're going red line straight across. And so from the user, do I have the foreign key? No, I have the primary key, so that means I'm the has many. Has many design shirts. Guess what? If the associations are written well, has many will always be plural and belongs to will always be singular. But because you could name it however you want, you could name it wrong. But fun fact.
When you do one association, if you just did the has many design shirts, can you just go and do the belongs to other side of it, or do you?
You can, but there's no reason to. Right now we're doing test-driven development. So we write the test first, it fails. And we could have this half of the association working just fine and have the other half totally broken. But since we're not testing that right now, we don't care about that right now. Doesn't matter. They're totally two separate things, even if they're like pointing at each other. So that's why. Good question, though. Yeah, the question was for the people watching at home. If we do has many design shirts, does that mean we should go to the shirt model and do a belongs to something? The answer is no. Okay, so we're still failing on 21. Yes. So uninitialized constant user designed shirt. So what's our assumption here? Yeah. And table designed shirts. Cool. And it doesn't. So what do we have to tell it?
Would it be, sorry, back on the assumption, would it be that it's a class design shirt?
The method. Sorry, what's that?
Back where you, no, that's great. Aren't there the assumptions that there's a class designed shirt? Not designed
Oh, thank
shirt?
you. Gotcha. Yes, totally right.
And I can't see your table thing, but is that one plural? Table design shirts?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So you specify the class shirt.
So we have to say what class we're going to, right? So we're on the user model and we're trying to get over to shirts, but it's not assuming that because it doesn't know how. So we have to tell it that we want the shirt class, right? If we run it again, expect user design shirts to match blah, blah, blah. No such column shirts dot user ID, right? That's a pretty helpful error. If we look here, there is no user ID in this table. So what's the assumption it's making?
Foreign key, user ID, which is not.
Yeah, foreign key in other table should be my name underscore ID. So we are the user class. So it's looking for user ID.
Is this when you use source?
I think
No.
foreign key.
Oh, you just name the foreign key.
Yeah, we can just tell it the foreign key. So if we say foreign key, what is the name of our foreign key? Designer id. Right?
So you do have to specify ID on that one.
Do we? I think so. Do we have to specify the ID? I believe so, because that's the actual foreign key. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. And then our test passes. And we're on to the next one. Right? Does this make sense how it's just like logicking each step of the way? Because I can keep going, but we should get to one of the source ones at least, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll do two more. So this one is has many purchases, user.purchases. So that's the method we need. And it's going to bring back purchase, which is an instance of a purchase. So we're going from user to purchases. So how do we get there? Yeah, the black line, right? Foreign key in the other table or my table?
Other table.
Other table, which tells me
Has many.
that I has many
It has many cheeseburgers.
many purchases, right? If I run this again, no such column purchases user ID. So first assumption is Bless you.
Thank you.
Right? Has many. Is this true or false? It's true. But this time, it's like I can't find a user ID in the purchases table. What is it called in the purchases table? Purchaser ID. So what do? Foreign key, purchase, and it passes, right? So let's do one more, and then you can go back to the challenges and try them on your own. So this one, we have undefined method purchase shirts. So here we're trying to get back purchase shirts, which I assume is a shirt. It is. So user.purchase shirts. So we're going from user and finding all the shirts they purchased. So how do we get that information? So we have to go to user and get all their purchases. And then we have to go get all the shirts that they purchased. So we're doing two paths. So that tells us that we're doing a has many through, right? Purchase shirts. Let's just run this. We've seen this error before now. Uninitialized constant user purchased shirt. So our assumption here is purchased shirt and purchased shirts. That's not true. We're doing a through. So we have to pick an existing one. We only have the choice between design shirts or purchases. Why purchases? Yeah, because we're trying to get the purchases, literally. And if this is named well, then we can safely assume that's what we're getting. So if we say through purchases, run the spec again, we get my favorite error. Active record has many through source association not found error. How's that for a name? Could not find the source associations, purchase shirt or purchase shirts in model purchase. Try has many purchase shirts through purchases, source something. And then it says, is it one of shirt or purchaser? So where is it getting this information from? By the way, it's saying in model purchase. Why is it saying in model purchase if we're in the user spec right now? Yeah, so we're in the user model. We went through purchases. That goes through this association and gets us over to the purchases table and the purchase model. If we had like has many poops, for example, and we come back and we run this test again, it's not that smart. It's going to the purchase model and it's saying, is it shirt, purchaser, or poops? It doesn't care if those associations are real. It's literally just looking in here and saying, pick one of your associations because it has to be one of those. So we're trying to go from purchases to shirts. How do we do that? Yeah, so we could say source shirt. So this is literally in the purchase model. We are going to use their shirt association. And then that test passed.
Can you show it back again?
Yeah, so so user has many purchase shirts through purchases, takes us here. Our has many purchases foreign ID key thing takes us to the purchases table. So we just went from user down the black line to purchases, right? And now we're in purchases, so we're dealing with the purchase model, right? And it's saying you must pick one of these associations. That's what the source means. If it can automatically, if it shares a name with one of the associations, it will automatically follow it, no problem. But since we don't have a method in our purchase class called purchase shirts, then it doesn't know where to go. So we have to pick one. So we want to go to shirts, not back to user, so shirts.
So you don't always have to have a source if there's a pre-existing connection in the other table.
To try this, maybe to make this even more plain, what if I change this association? I'm going to comment this out. I'm going to change my association in purchase to purchase shirts. This is risky of me to do because it might not work. Oh, this doesn't work because of the other test. But But in this case, if we had something like belongs to purchase shirt, rather, sorry, then it would figure out, because of the name of this thing, it would automatically go through this association. But if it doesn't find one with the same name, then you have to tell it which one to use. Capiche? Cool. And if you need really good resources on this stuff, one of the things you'll find when you see me do breakouts is that I often steal stuff from your resources. So if we go to like today and we go down here to additional resources, like these are awesome. The middle one in particular, if you haven't seen this, is explains how the assumptions work for the things, right? That's all I got. Any questions? The one other thing I'll say is I don't know if it's there yet, though I guess I can check since I'm here. If we go to this challenge is alternative church challenge. You have this here. This one, mentor Dylan made another one if you want to practice. So it's here. You just have to check out the branch, and it's another extra practice one.
Where was it? Did
Yes,
you just search by name?
It's just a branch in the challenge that you're actually doing. Cool? All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, and